Okay everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we will be looking at Doom the Dark Ages. It's just released. I've been playing since the 13th thanks to early access. I've just beat the game, so I thought I'd give you my thoughts, go through how the game works, and what to expect playing this game. If you do enjoy this video and you end up buying the game, do let me know and leave a comment, like and subscribe. It does help me a lot. Now let me transition to my little review corner and we'll get into the game. Also, just obligatory spoiler warning, I will be discussing some story elements, however, I will only be discussing things up until chapter 11, which is roughly the halfway point, and a few things that will be further past chapter 11, but those will be mentioned. Either way, there's spoilers. If you don't want to be spoiled, go play the game and come back once you finish it. Now, first things first, I want to run through the story review very quickly, and then we'll move on to gameplay and what I thought of the gameplay elements. So, for the story, it is your quintessential Doom experience. You slay hordes of demons with all the weaponry you could ever need. As per normal for the Doom Slayer, he is the main character. However, with the story, he is just kind of there with everything happening around him. He is never really the main focus of the plot, and he also is never interacting directly with a lot of characters. He's always at a distance, being spoken to, never speaking back. Now, this is pretty expected for Doom. I didn't expect them to do some in-depth character development of the Doom Slayer. He has always been a very mute character. He doesn't speak often, and when he does, it's usually only one word. For example, within the Doom Eternal DLC, the only word we see him or hear him say is no. And in this game, he has one line, to my knowledge, which is him literally saying run. That is it, and it is one of the coolest moments in the game, in my opinion. A lot of the story you learn is through characters like King Novik, who is on the screen currently, as well as his daughter or sister, I'm not really sure who she is. It's this character who's about to appear now. She is the other main character that you hear from. There are also a lot of elements of the Makers, who are the angelic beings from Doom Eternal. And in saying that, it does expand on the history of the Makers with the Argent Nurians, or whoever they are, the humans, and the Doomslayer's history with them, because as we find out through this game, the little thing that's in his chest, at least in this game, is a device that basically wipes his mind except for his hatred of the demons, and in doing that they kind of have him on a leash for a good chunk of the game. He eventually does break out of this, and it doesn't really change anything gameplay wise, but it is interesting to know that the Slayer does have history with the Makers and not just the humans or the Sentinels as they're called, as well as history with the demons, which was pretty obvious. We also eventually learn, and this is the further down portion of the story, about the Cosmic Realm, which is the first new realm to be introduced besides the human realm and Hell. It is a very interesting place to play through. It is a lot like Hell, which I kind of expected, but it's very different in its own unique ways. Does throw you for a loop a few times, but it is very, very cool, and I look forward to them doing more things like this, where they have new realms and other dimensions to explore besides Hell and Earth. So that's all I'm going to really cover for the story. As I will say at the end, definitely go play this game for the story. The story is really fun. It is also just another Doom game, and from memory and from just finishing Doom Eternal, it is great. Which also leads us into the next topic, which is the gameplay. So Dark Ages plays very differently than Eternal, however it still captures the same feel that Eternal and 2016 have. Firstly, movement has been toned down. Dashing has been completely replaced with sprinting, and the same goes for double jumping. It is completely gone. Instead, the climbing function from Doom Eternal is still there, however, this time it isn't player controlled, it is just automated. So if you latch onto a wall that climbs, you just go up it. They also have other movement tech, such as the shield, which I'll get into in a minute, but there is shield bashing. It does help you move around a lot, and it is very, very fun. It just focuses more on parrying and on-foot combat than it does the in-air jumping around, dashing around, punching and glory killing that Eternal focuses on. Now let's talk about probably the newest or the biggest new feature, the shield. The shield is really, really cool. When you first get it, all it can do is parry and shield bash, as you can see right here. However, within the second mission or the third mission, you do get the chain shield attachment, which lets you throw it. And my god, throwing the shield is so powerful. It is kind of crazy. Not only does it tear through all of the trash mobs and the little mobs, but also when you hit a actual demon or any of the standard demon types, it stuns them, so you can put in some big damage. For example, if you throw it into a Mancubus, I have found out that using the super shotgun, you can blow off both of its arms and that kills it instantly. It is so helpful. Not only that, but the shield also does come with a parrying system, and the parrying system is very, very useful and powerful in a lot of ways. So first off, the way the parrying system actually works is that when enemies shoot at you, some of them will have green. When you parry a green perfectly, as in you pull up the shield right before it hits you, you will be able to send it back and possibly stun the enemy. Other times it will trigger an effect. So as I'm going to show on screen now, there are upgrade tracks for everything. So you have your weapons, your shield, and your melee. Your shield has the standard perk tree of upgrades, and then has these things called runes. These runes are gameplay enhancements. For example, the one that I used most often in gameplay was the auto turret. So when you perfectly parry, you get an auto turret that fires on enemies. This is a lifesaver, and it does help in a lot of cases. Not only that, but aiming the shield also will give you slow-mo time, or I don't remember, bullet time is what it's called, which can come in very handy in certain aspects. Now, since we talked about the shield, I might as well talk about the melee weapons. There are 3 melee weapons. The one you initially start with is the Blood Punch. I don't think it's called the Blood Punch, but I'm calling it that. It is the same thing as it was in Eternal. It's just a very powerful fist. The second one you get around the 4th or 5th mission is the Flail, which is the one that I used majority of the time in game. It is also seemingly the best all around. While the Blood Punch seems to come back faster, the Flail comes back at a medium rate and does medium damage. The third option is a Mace. This does really high damage, but it does not come back as quickly, or at least I didn't notice it coming back as quickly. So based off the shield and melee options, this is already giving players a lot of personalization in how you want to perform and how you want to face combat. But there is also the biggest option, and probably the most prevalent option in Doom, the guns. Now, much like Doom Eternal and Doom 2016, each gun comes with a variant. However, this time it is just 2 variants instead of 3. So in this example, you either have the starting weapon, which is the battle shotgun, and you have the super shotgun. They share the same slot. Each gun has 2 variants. Another example is the grenade launcher also has the rocket launcher in the same slot. Each weapon has 3 to 4 upgrades that you can buy or collect, which are just general upgrades, and once you upgrade them fully, you get a mastery challenge, which then you can master the weapon. Now, to upgrade this, the game has introduced a new system called Sentinel Shrines. This is basically a thing where you can collect gold, rubies, and another item which I can't remember the name of, and in doing that you go to the Sentinel Shrine and you purchase the upgrades. This is a really cool idea. I did like it, however, I think that it would have benefited more from doing certain challenges instead of having to purchase the upgrades. There are also other gameplay elements, like on the screen right now you can see that there is this big Mancubus with a little sigil above his head. This is one of the enemies that is called a leadership mob. Basically the way you deal with these are you have to kill the surrounding demons to lower its shield, and then you damage it. Damaging gives you the opportunity for a glory kill, which is pretty much the only return for the glory kills in the game. When you glory kill them, they will upgrade certain aspects, so there is health, shields, and ammo for a particular type of weapon. Some of them might be launcher weapons, might be shotgun weapons, it really just depends. Now that's all I have to say on the base gameplay. However, there are two other elements of gameplay that I haven't touched on yet, and they are probably the biggest surprises and changes in my opinion. First things first, we're going to talk about the mech. It is so much fun to play in the mech. It feels how a Titanfall mech would feel if you were just running around punching things. They absolutely capture the quintessential Doomslayer feel, but on a Titanic scale. These missions are quite easy compared to other missions, and they aren't very long. You don't spend much time in the mechs, but I understand why they did that, because you would just be running around these giant locations punching things, which I'd be fine with, but gameplay wise that's probably going to get a bit boring for the 6th mech mission in a row. On the other side of things, you have the dragons. Or not dragons, you have your dragon. I named mine Pablo. The dragons are basically aerial combat vehicles. They have a gun, they have speed mode, and they have combat mode. This essentially is you locking onto a target, and then you dodge an attack to get a damage boost, and when you get that damage boost you can then damage shields and damage the target better. This is best shown with fighting ships as well as tentacles, which I'm not going to talk about, but yeah, you fight some tentacles around the game. It's also a traversal option for certain missions where I just had to fly around to get to certain places. Overall, I really did enjoy the dragon sections. However, I feel like they could have done a few things differently. For example, the dragon only has one weapon that you ever get. You only ever get one weapon, which is a machine gun. I understand why, but I feel like the dragon could have been incorporated a little bit more. As for the mech was really, really cool, but the entire time you're also being shot by tanks, and they don't really do anything to you, they're just there. When you're in the mech fights, the only real challenge is the other giant Titan demons, and they aren't that hard once you figure out how to dodge them effectively. Now that's all I'm going to say for gameplay. There are a few other things that I want to go through before we end the video. First things first is the puzzles / secrets. They were really, really fun to find, especially because the environment of certain levels is very large and open, like this level that you're watching me play through now. It is very, very open, it allows for a lot of exploration, which I enjoyed thoroughly, and it had a lot of secrets. There are a few other secrets that are like you go find a statue and you destroy the statue, other things like that, which will lead to gold that gets you upgrades. You can also find random mini bosses that you can fight for more gold and more upgrade points. So overall, what I'm trying to say is great fucking job on the level design. It was really, really fun to play, and I don't have any complaints about how they designed the levels. If anything, I would just ask for more levels, because once you finish the game, you only have to replay the game basically. But what did you guys think of Doom Eternal if you played it so far? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching, and remember, come over to the Twitch streams where we play games every so often. Have a lovely day.